Even though the DC Extended Universe, the live action films, seem to be very, very polarizing, one thing that has been consistent for the past, man, almost 2 decades is the incredible DC animated department, the TV shows, the movies, and we've got one coming up that we've been looking forward to as longtime Batman fans, DC fans for years and years and years, and we're finally going to get it. Batman the Killing Joke, confirmed to be rated R, confirmed to have the return of Kevin Conroy as Batman, Mark Hamill as the Joker. I don't even know what to say. I can't even believe this is actually being made. So I'm going to talk about it here, what we hope to see, what we're hoping that what they'll do, kind of the differences between this and the movie, all that stuff. And joining me to talk about this, please welcome from the BatmanUniverse.com and from Comic Book Film Review and from the Next Dimension Dragon Ball Z podcast. You heard him on the channel a few months ago. He's back now to talk about Batman, his first real love before Dragon Ball, or maybe at the same time, who knows. Please welcome Donovan.
Thank you very much for having me back. Yes, Batman is the one abusive lover that I always return to, no matter what movie he's in. And hopefully, this movie will be a good date after the sour last one.
Yeah, well, it's funny. It's a good day because it might actually be like the most controversial. And I actually wanted to ask you about this. Let me ask you a question. I've never asked you this before. How did you first discover Batman? Was it with the animated series?
It's a combination because of my age. Like when the animated series came out, and also around that time they were showing reruns of the '60s show. So I was very young.
The '60s show.
I had with the animated series and the '60s show, I had two very opposite views of Batman to just give me an idea of a character that I liked no matter what. And I mean, I don't remember getting into Batman. He's just always been there, and I've always liked him all my life. I've liked when I was younger. I liked the Kitty stuff with him and Robin. As I got older, I read it. Reading comics helped me learn how to read. I got into the darker stuff like this, and I've just been sadly obsessed. To the point where he's so mainstream now, I say that it's not a big. It doesn't really matter if someone's a Batman fan, but I do profess to know quite a bit of the character, so that's what I got to going for me.
Yes, and that's why you're here. Now, for me, it was the Burton movie, because people who weren't around back in '89, that Burton movie was so promoted and hyped. I mean, there was Batman everything. There was Diet Coke commercials. There was 7-Eleven's thing. I mean, I was very little. I was a little kid, but I just remember the overly promotion of Batman. And then came the animated series. I wanted to ask you about that. This movie, The Killing Joke, even though it's going to be rated R, and I'm going to get into Killing Joke spoilers in a little bit, okay? So
we can't not.
Yeah, we can't not. And that's the thing I want to say. If you have not read The Killing Joke and you don't want to be spoiled, then I'm giving you a warning right now. You may be spoiled for the movie unless they make a change. We'll see what happens. But the animated series, okay? Have you ever met somebody who didn't like this show? Because that's the one show that almost everybody I talked to loved.
I've heard, not by anybody, but I heard from somebody else that he knew somebody who didn't like it. But really, that's like one person out of like billions of people who loved it. So who cares?
So, okay, we know that Batman Beyond. Well, I was actually kind of confused about that because Batman Beyond kind of is supposed to follow the same continuity, but not really. Like, I was kind of mixed up about that. Am I correct on that? Does Batman Beyond?
Well, the animated series is his own thing. Like this Killing Joke movie is not like in the animated series continuity, although some of the characters look similar. It's its own like adaptation. The animated, because you had like Batman the animated series, and then the same creative team did Superman, and then they brought Batman back with new characters.
Yeah, the Batman and Robin series, correct?
Well, they did Batman, then Batman and Robin as like another season of that show. Then they did Superman, and then they did like the New Adventures of Batman with Nightwing and Batgirl and the other characters. And then they did Batman Beyond, and then they did Justice League, and that's all within the same continuity of like 10, 12 years of really awesome stories.
Yeah, great cartoons, man. Great stuff. Now, but you're telling me something I didn't know. So you're telling me that The Killing Joke, even though Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill are reprising the roles from those classic animated series, this is not part of that continuity.
Well, it's not because Batman Beyond is in its own part of that DC animated continuity, and in that one,
Spoiler
Barbara
alert.
Gordon. Spoiler alert, exactly. Yes, thank you. Barbara Gordon grew up to be to inherit her father's position as police commissioner, and this story is adapting the post-crisis Batman comic book continuity, and that did not happen to her.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up because I was thinking, and again, we're going to do some spoilers here. Not anything too crazy, but some. Because I was thinking what they were going to do is spoiler. Okay, you've been warned 5 times now. Obviously, if you read The Killing Joke, the book, Joker paralyzes her. She becomes the Oracle or whatever later on, I believe. I thought that maybe she was going to eventually, when she became the Oracle, she would then go on to follow that continuity. In other words, I thought they were going to kind of do this and then kind of somehow tie it back into the animated continuity. But is that even possible at this point? I don't even know if that's even possible without a lot of, like, I guess, new writing? I don't know.
Well, I don't think any of these animated films are in that continuity because all these animated films have been either PG-13, this is one's rated R, they've been at an older audience, they've been adapting different stories where the continuity just doesn't mesh because they had divergent timelines. And
Yeah.
I think, honestly, even if they wanted to, they couldn't. I mean, it's what they didn't have the voices, but they can't, like, connect the two because they don't want to market, something that's like, for instance, the original Return of the Joker movie was
I was going to
heavily
bring that up, actually. Yeah, go ahead.
edited because they don't want to connect it to a cartoon series that children blocks are advertising. So this couldn't be in continuity for a number of reasons, but they couldn't make it in continuity if they wanted to because of the logistics of connecting an R-rated movie towards a children's cartoon. As dark as it was still made for kids ostensibly. And this story is in the comic book, it's an R-rated Batman comic story. Like Dark Knight Returns is an R-rated Batman story, and they could not really try to say this is the same one that you've known since you were a kid because it would be a little bit traumatizing, and also, like, I think it's just for a variety of reasons they couldn't do it.
Well, I had always thought that the whole point of it was all of us grew up with the animated series, and then this is kind of like, okay, we're all grown up now. We're all, in our 20s and 30s. We all can now watch this as grown-ups and say, okay, this is like the hardcore Batman. Like that. I'm guessing that's still part of the appeal, though. I'm guessing part of the reason why they brought back Conroy and Hamill was to pretty much appeal to the animated series fans. And honestly, Donovan, I feel like some folks are going to be confused about it.
Well, I mean, that's definitely a part of it. I mean, beyond our generation, Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill are seen by virtually everybody, no matter what generation they are, as the definitive Batman and Joker voices.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like, even if you didn't watch the show, you understand how integral they are to getting across the ultimate ideas of the characters. And the Killing Joke is seen as like the ultimate Joker story, and it's specifically about Batman and Joker's relationship. It's the first story to tackle their relationship in this directive of a manner, and you couldn't do it without, like, characters or actors who have established a relationship over 25 years, basically.
Makes sense. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense then. So it was more so about just the familiarity of and the talent, because Conroy to me is Batman for, not to take a Schumacher. He's Batman forever. You know what I mean? And
Oh yes.
Hamill is like, I mean, people have to say he's the best Joker, and I kind of have. It's hard to disagree. And this movie could blow them out of proportion. Now, do you agree with it being R-rated? Because I honestly, I don't see how they could have even told this story without it being R-rated. I just don't know how they could do it and serve it justice.
Honestly, this story, the comic story is an R-rated story. This is not the comic story in itself. It has a suggested for mature audience label on the comic, which I think is a very easy way to make it R-rated. I mean, it's not a story for kids, and that's not to say, like, it'll go over the heads. It is extremely violent. That's really mainly it. And there's flat out sickening, disturbing subject material involving a beloved characters of many decades in the Batman lore. It's not a story you just jump into. This is a story that's made for adults who really kind of understand the depths of the personalities that are involved.
How important is it, in your opinion, for Batman fans to read The Killing Joke? And do you think they should read it before seeing this, or should they see it and then go read it later, in your opinion?
Oh, I think they always should read the comics before, because generally the comics are always better. As good as the movies are, like I really enjoyed the second Dark Knight Returns animated movie, but like the comics are where like the blood and bone of the storytelling are, because it's just a lot more raw. And also, we'll get into this, but like you cannot beat that original Brian Bolland artwork. It's just like some of the best Batman artwork you will ever see in your life. And beyond that, I mean, this is one of those stories that like it's up there with Dark Knight Returns, Batman Year One, and Nightfall, and
Nightfall's my
No Man's
favorite.
Land.
Yeah.
It's my favorite too.
Yeah, I love Nightfall.
Like those iconic stories that people name. This is always within the top three to read, and there are a number of reasons why certain fans may not want to read it for very understandable reasons. But like, it's honestly one of those Batman stories that you kind of have to, especially if you're a fan of the Joker, you kind of have to read at one point or another, whether you like it or not. It's just one of those kind of like lessons that you need to learn through Batman school to get to.
Yeah, I mean, hell, I remember hearing that Heath Ledger himself read this in preparation for the movie.
That's true. Yeah, reportedly he read it in preparation and he actually put it down.
That should tell you something. Now, I wanted to talk about the ending. Not yet, though. Later on. And by the way, do you mind if I plug your Twitter?
Please, go ahead.
Yes,
it's new.
He's new. He's new. Donovan is new on Twitter, so I will put the link down below to Donovan's Twitter. It's basically DonoDMG1, but the link will
That's
be
right.
down below. Yeah, follow. But I wanted to ask you, the animation. All right, we talked about it earlier off air. Looks a little bit like a Flash cartoon, and I wanted you to kind of explain what's up, because one thing that's clearly identifiable, especially if you're a fan of the animated series, is that this is not the 90s animation. This is like a totally different kind of look to this series. And of course, it's like you said, it's not supposed to follow that continuity, so maybe that's why they did it.
Well, I saw a bit of, because every time they release these movies, there's always a sort of like a 12-minute preview for the next movie, like where the creators talk about what they're doing and how they're approaching it. And I saw that one included for the Justice League versus Teen Titans movie, because this was one following it, and they explained that like understandably the original comic book, the artwork is so detailed that you cannot translate that to a two-dimensional animated movie, which is perfectly understandable. What they try to do was they try to meet it halfway, and like instead of, some shots are Bolland, but some shots are they approach it from like another artist, and they specifically named this artist named Kevin Nolan, who's done Batman comics before. He did a Man Bat comic.
No relation to Chris Nolan, who also did Batman.
No. I think Kevin Nolan's also from the UK, but he's a comic artist, and his design are a lot more simplified and slick and stripped down. That was kind of that's what they explained the approach was. Ultimately, though, I do think that the animation is kind of like a weak T look of the animated series. I mean, I kind of like how Batman looks, but like everybody else, like you can just tell that the animation is not slick. There's not as many lines as there should be.
It's not smooth. Yeah, frames. Yeah.
Not very detailed, and it's unfortunate. I mean, I'll still watch it because like the voices got me into it, but like it really is not the sharpest looking movie they've come out with. And I hope that's not to the point where it kills the momentum.
No, I agree, because there's no question that Conroy and Hamill are going to bring it, bro. Especially Hamill, bro. Like, Hamill is so... And it ain't going to be just him flipping his cloak back, and that's it. No, we're going to see some real, like, acting chops from this guy, I think, in this. Because, dude, there's never been a better Joker story. Like, why not freaking take the gloves off now? You know what I mean?
Well, Mark Hamill himself has said that, like, he's tried to retire a couple of times with the video games, but he says he's always wanted to do the Killing Joke.
That's
right. This is the one story that gets into Joker's head. It proposes a potential origin story for the Joker, and it shows the Joker at his absolute most sadistic, in ways which have been controversial for years, honestly.
Yeah, you folks have to go check that out. I mean, he's not... I don't know if he's quite the level of Buffalo Bill, but he's close to it. So what were your impressions of the trailer? I did a trailer breakdown on the channel, but I was wondering, what are your impressions when you saw the trailer? Did you were you impressed? Other than the animation, like, do you think they're going to do it right?
Well, Bruce Timm is behind this, and he's been away for a few years. He came back briefly to do his movie Gods and Monsters, but Bruce Timm is the creative force behind the animated series of Batman, Superman, Justice League, and Batman Beyond, and he is a comics fan. I mean, he's pretty much the reason why all those series were great, in my opinion. So he is. It's not just a guy that they hired to do it. It's like one of the visionaries of the Batman of our generation behind this. Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill were into it. I've heard clips of them saying the dialogue from the comic. That got me going.
That's great. That's great.
And because the dialogue, it's a comic book that is very much like down to earth. If you read the comic, you know that like the names Batman and Joker are actually never spoken in the comic, because it's about their relationship to the point where it's so personal. Like the story starts. This is not a spoiler, but the story starts off with Batman just visiting the Joker in Arkham, and saying, "I just want to talk. I don't know if I'll kill you or you kill me, but
which is in the trailer."
Yeah, and I love that because it's like I've always heard that in Kevin Conroy's voice, and now he's saying it. So that's really awesome. So yeah. I was impressed.
I mean, one thing I'm wondering about. I'm going to pick up the Blu-ray. I'm wondering what the hell is next. Like, I'm wondering, will they go ahead and adapt Nightfall? Like, will they? Because there's so many Batman stories. That's the one thing about Batman. Like earlier, we talked about like getting a job at DC, and I feel like if I was hired at DC, not in the animation division, but more so in the comic division, they said, okay, you're the head writer for Batman, I would be terrified for 3 reasons. 1, you don't want to piss off the Batman fans. 2, which I think is the biggest one, there's already enough Batman stories that, well, actually, it's 2 reasons. This is the last one. I don't know what else you could do with Batman, because there's been so many Detective Comics. There's been so many Batman stories. He's fought Martians and saved Santa Claus. What else can you do with Batman now? Like in the modern era, like what other stories can you tell? You know what I mean?
I have a couple of ideas, but I'll keep them secret.
But there's not a lot. At least you have to admit that it's challenging because there's so many other Batman stories.
Well, they've tried like killing him off like 3 or 4
5 times. Yeah.
And it's like replacing him. I mean, it is difficult. I think that like he is such a universally compelling character that like he's endlessly interesting, and he has a terrific supporting cast and his partners and his rogues gallery, that the potential is still there for more stories. So I never say never, but so much has been done now that like in terms of adaptation, I mean, they've been kind of sticking with like the New 52 modern stuff, with the Fifth Robin and some of those stories that like I don't know if they would do, because Nightfall is, as much as I love it, it's a very 90s story, and even though the Killing Joke came out in 1988, it is so iconically discussed that they could. I mean, honestly, people have been clamoring for this movie for years. Since they started doing these movies for an older audience. They've been clamoring for years and years and years and years and years. So, and they've proposed it for years, but they've kind of had to work out the kinks. So, I mean, but now that they're doing it, I guess the sky is the limit. I mean, they did Dark Knight Returns, which was the other big one, the unthinkable one. So, like after this, I mean, like I would say Hush is an easy one to adapt in terms of a movie. No Man's Land would be very difficult, but that's like another huge story that they could do. I mean, that's on the table, I suppose. I would say Hush is an obvious choice, which is basically like a 12-issue story of him just basically fighting his villains. So yeah, I agree that like it's hard to come up with new Batman stories.
What about Death in the Family? I mean, they kind of did that.
They
kind of did that, yeah. Not like this, but they've done it, yeah.
I mean, like the gist of the story was told in that story. I like that movie quite a bit. But I mean, like
what about The Long Halloween?
They could do The Long Halloween. They could do Dark Victory. They could do Gothic. They could do. There's a story. I mean, about Batman Venom, where he's hooked on the Venom drug.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
That's a very dark story. That would be R-rated probably.
He's pretty much hooked on drugs. I mean, essentially.
He is. He has to lock himself in the Batcave to go into withdrawal. But never mind.
Very
there's
adult.
a number of stories they could do.
Now, I wanted to ask you about this because you mentioned Bruce Timm, and I am familiar with Bruce Timm as well. Maybe not as much as you, but I respect him. Do you think that he is the secret behind? I don't know if he really should get all the credit, but why is it that the DC animated films are so good? And I'm not going to turn this into a BVS Bash Fest or Man of Steel Bash Fest, even though it could easily segue into one. But why are the DC animated films so much more consistently good than the films? Even like Green Lantern, like the comic, the animated movies seem to be so much better. Why? Like, is it just who's behind it? Is it like corporate studio heads like making the movies too like not comic booky? Like, is that what it is? I keep thinking that's what it is, that these guys in suits don't really understand the core story. They just want to make money, and the animation guys seem to know it better. Like, what is the secret here?
Well, I think that, for one thing, for a long time, I mean, Kevin Smith talked about this, that like the movie people and the Hollywood producers they did not want comic book people involved. Now they've flipped on that because there have been a lot of Marvel writers involved in the movies up to a certain point. They kind of got away from them then, and I know that like Jeff Johns, who's the chief creative officer at DC, co-runs DC, has been involved in the most recent some of the movies. Except for I don't think he was really involved in the Nolan trilogy, but I feel that like for one thing, comic books adapt to the cartoon medium very easily.
I agree. Yeah,
like you can mimic the art style. You can be a lot more dramatic in the storytelling. The fantastical elements are a lot easier to swallow. But I think, like in the case of Bruce Timm, I mean, he was a comic book fan. You know, he likes a lot of noir, pulpy, dark storytelling. And even though he was constrained by the censors in making kids cartoons for the anime series, he did not take away the essence of what made the characters themselves. He's proving they could be appealing to both adults and kids. So he found that like sweet spot of, he basically exposed the X factor of what makes these characters endlessly likable, because they don't have to be either for kids or adults. They can appeal to all of them. And now that because also they're just well written and well directed, and great voice acting. It was a happy accident of a lot of different people really believing in the material. And in some instances, the worst comic book films are the ones that were the people behind them don't believe in the material enough. And I think that like when you have people, Mark Hamill's a gigantic comic book fan. Like Kevin Conroy loves doing Batman. Like, these people want to be here. They want to do the best that they can, and the best that they can often brings us the best of what we've ever had. So it's just the people involved are really good at
they
what
put
they
more
do.
love into it, you think?
Yeah, and that's always a kind of a fan thing. Like, they must love it as much as I do, but that's often been proven to be the case.
Yeah, I think that the movies are just a bunch of suits, man, and they're out of control. That's why I think that even though I don't agree with everything he does, Kevin Feige, I think, is a great guy to lead this thing. Again, I don't agree with everything he does, and I kind of agree a little bit with or I disagree with what he did with Age of Ultron with the Thor scene, that that whole thing. But he's actually a fan. He grew up like a Marvel nerd, and same thing with J.J. Abrams, grew up a Star Wars nerd, and it seems like the future of this industry is people who grew up nerds taking control because they know the material so well, right?
Yeah, apparently, from what I heard, that like Kevin Feige said, we've been trying to figure out how to make these big movies for years. It's right in front of us. So he's picked up a comic book. Let's just do the comics. And like ever since these movies have come out, they've been more and more faithful to the source material, and the ones that are less well received are the ones that kind of just try to do their own thing. Because I think whenever the Hollywood people try to outthink the source material, that's when they fail.
Yeah, which seems to be the problem with a few movies that came out recently that shall remain nameless, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah. So last thing before we get out of here, the big thing that I'm kind of racking my brain on is, if I remember correctly, and I haven't read it in years, the Killing Joke ends with Batman killing the Joker. Okay? I've already spoiled it.
Well, that is up for interpretation.
Yeah, it's up for interpretation. Exactly, yeah. So are we going to see that? Are we going to see that? That's what I want to know. What do you think?
I heard that like they don't change anything. They just add things to make it longer. Like there's more of a Batgirl sequence. I think that because originally, well, this was written by Alan Moore, and the same writer behind Watchmen, V for Vendetta,
the dark stuff, pretty much.
Exactly. This is in his heyday. He originally wrote this with the idea that this would be out of continuity, which is why he asked, "Is it okay if I paralyze Barbara Gordon?" And reportedly, like the editor Lynn Wein at the time said, "Yeah, sure, kill the bitch." Like apparently that's word for word what he said.
Which that makes sense. I mean, yeah, I would say something like that. Yeah, do whatever you want, kill her. Fine.
Well, I mean, like that sparked off a gigantic controversy with her because there's a lot of writers and fans who did not. That's why she's Oracle, because she was going to be just like left in the background and not never seen again. And if it wasn't for people who liked the character, we would not have a better character in Oracle. Um, but anyway, like the idea was that like it was supposed to be an Elseworld story. So the interpretation that like at the end Batman kills the Joker is there. I think that's kind of contradicting. I mean, it goes in line with like the joke that he says at near the end, but it doesn't follow a strong line of logic. Although it's not unbelievable considering the metatextual nature of it. So it's kind of like it really is up for interpretation whether you want him to do so or not. Either way, it's a very bizarre ending.
That's what I was gonna say. Are they gonna keep the ending? Do you think they will? They have to. They almost have to. Because I feel like if they don't, people are gonna be pissed off.
I'm pretty sure I heard Kevin Conroy laughing in that preview I saw, so I would imagine so.
That's gonna be fucked, bro. I can't wait to see it. I wonder if they're gonna have Mark Hamill actually narrate the thing.
Well, there's no narration, but he does have like when Batman's running through the Hall of Mirrors and stuff, he kind of mocks him and he's talking about one bad day. So I imagine that all that's there. I know that in the past when they've tried narration for these movies or cartoons, it's not really worked out well. So like, I don't think they'll do more than is necessary.
Yeah, I agree with you. We'll see what happens. It's just it's weird because the Killing Joke is not canon. Oh, I hate that word because especially in comics.
Well, it was so well received that it was turned into canon.
Exactly, and then that's what I'm saying. It wasn't supposed to be canon, but because of but okay, it wasn't supposed to be canon, but it was well received. They made it into canon, and then the Oracle story came after that to please the fans who made it. What a fuck. It's hard to do comics, yo. You can't please everybody.
Well, no, it wasn't like I mean, there were. I think that I talked about this a couple years ago. Like, it wasn't like a vocal minority who were mad about because like you took a character that was around there for 25 years, and you not only it's not just the fact that she was paralyzed. She was right out sexually abused by the Joker.
Yes, she was.
In a way
it's
that
dark.
And in a way that like was completely like disregarding like her whole legacy. I mean, it's tantamount like to doing to like like for instance like this would never happen. Like if Superman just like was somehow paralyzed and stripped naked in a Batman story, Superman fans are absolutely entitled to get pissed off. It was not like it was like a throwaway character. So that's kind of like why this is so controversial, and because of the stark nature of what Joker was doing to try to make Commissioner Gordon go crazy, it really, I mean, this is advertised the most shocking Joker story, and I think it's a little sensationalist, but honestly, that's not untrue. It's really gritty.
Yeah, because he's always been a dick, but in this, he's to the point where he's like a rapist, freaking, And you know what? I feel like in The Dark Knight, I feel like Ledger, when he was doing the scenes with Maggie Gyllenhaal, I feel like he was trying to kind of conjure up that spirit too, with kind of with the tongue thing. But I don't think he ever went that far. Yeah, at least not in the movie. He was just kind of the classic Joker. He never, I never saw that character as being like a rapist. In fact, he seemed more concerned with killing and proving his psychological point than anything with a relationship, or anything like that. This Joker's just mind fucked. And then there's the whole thing about how his wife and I'm not gonna spoil everything because people should check it out. But check out Donovan, the Batman universe, DBZ. I always get this website wrong because I have it bookmarked.
The Next Dimension of Dragon Ball Z podcast.
Yeah, but it's DBZ Next Dimension.
Oh yeah, .libsyn.com.
.libsyn.com. I always have it. I always get it mixed up. Check that out. I think I've heard every episode and I still don't. I just marathon download. Check that out, and of course Twitter. Anything else you want to plug?
The Comic Chrome review. Hell, we might even review this. Probably not, but
you
like
should.
CBF review spelled REVUE. CBFreview.libsyn.com. We're also on iTunes. BatmanUniverse.net has a lot of great stuff there. I'm involved in as well in terms of writing and some podcasting. Follow me on Twitter at DonoDMG1 at Twitter. And I believe that is it. Also, check out the Hooded Utilitarian comic magazine site for some writings, but it's not really related to Batman or the Killing Joke. Not yet, anyway.
Maybe soon. But yeah, Donovan's out there. He's always doing something comic book related, and Dragon Ball, because Dragon Ball was a comic. And I know a lot of people watching this
Yes.
video, you're on Geekdom for Dragon Ball, so there is the Next Dimension. Definitely check out the Next Dimension. Jesse was on here last week, and there's a lot of episodes, but I always tell everybody, if you have a long commute, which I did have when I heard your show, or if you have hours and hours of work and you don't really want to hear people, gossiping or whatnot, just download it and put it in your iPod, phone, whatever the hell. Put your headphones on, just listen, and you'll be fine. You have saved me, sir, from many hours of boredom.
All I ask is that you return the favor to your fellow man, as you have been.
I have
Very
been.
successful.
People have told me that, so I'm very happy to have been able to do that.
Oh yes.
All right. Well, folks. Well, I'm sure we'll come back and talk about the movie when it's actually out, and probably I know I'll do a review on it. I'm sure you will probably cover it at least to a degree when it comes out. So at least
I will probably watch this at Comic-Con because I heard it's premiering there.
Lucky. Well, let me know how it goes.
I shall do so.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for checking out the Geek the Movie Talk, and I'll catch you down the road.